What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Too Much Test Podcast, episode 13. I am joined by David Demesquita. You can find him on Instagram under dynamite_D or search David Demesquita on YouTube. I'm also here with Sam Stolt. You can find him on Instagram and YouTube. Look up Sam Stolt. And I wanted to just throw this out there. If you are enjoying this content, if you could share it, send it to a buddy, do whatever you need to do, get it out there. We're trying to grow this a little bit. We do this more for fun, but we do want to see some growth. So if you would do that, it'll add 100 points to your total testosterone. So just keep that in mind. So what's going on, guys?
Easily,
on top of that, I want to add in there that a lot of this content is non-monetizable, meaning that we do not make money off of this. So we're just having a good time at this point. We enjoy doing it. So we want to put out good content for you guys. And that's ultimately why we're doing this, and has no other incentive behind it besides we have a good time. We hope that you guys have a good time listening to us.
Yeah. So if you guys enjoy the content, if you get some value out of it, share it. Like if you tag us on Instagram, there's some links down below if you're listening to this, or if you're watching on YouTube, our Instagrams will be below. And if you tag us in your stories, like we will repost it or we will interact. We enjoy having these conversations and meeting you guys and stuff. So we appreciate any type of rating or anything like that. So how you guys doing?
Kick it off with something really intellectual. What's your guys' favorite sexual position? I'll start. I'll let you guys ponder this. I would say what I call nature. It's kind of like if you're like laying spooning on the bed, but it's from behind. You know, you're doing it to behind, but I don't know if that's my absolute favorite, but it's up there because it's just nice and comfortable. You've got a free hand. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Man, that's probably the hardest position to hit when you actually like have big legs. So like it got really awkward like in the beginning of my sexual like encounters and endeavors. Let's call them endeavors. I like that. Like I was a lot less than I was today, obviously. Like I wasn't like normally 225, 230 pounds walk around weight. And like as your legs get bigger and as everything else gets bigger, sexual positions become harder, period. Like no matter what. And especially because my wife works out, obviously, and she has massive legs as well. Yeah, like don't get me wrong. We have a perfectly fine and healthy and fun sex life, but certain positions have gotten harder over the years.
So Dave, if you had to pick one, what would it be?
Oh, if I had to pick one, I mean, like missionary for me is definitely like the easiest to get off to for sure. So like for like finishing, that's like always going to be number one for me at least. But honestly, if like in the mood, I actually love cowgirl.
What position is cowgirl?
That's where the girl's on top of you facing you. Reverse cowgirl is when I flipped around the other direction.
I don't know if I have a favorite, in all honesty.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. A while, like last month or something like that, she was laying down and I'm on top of her. And I like, when you put your bodies against each other too, sometimes you can get like that very sensual type of feeling at the same time, in addition to sex. And I was doing that. And afterwards we're showering and she's like, oh my God, I was like, could barely breathe when you're doing that. But as you were saying, David, 240 pounds. My girlfriend is 107 pounds or 108 pounds. So,
that same exact position, I got the same exact comment back afterwards. They're like, it feels so good, but like, I think I'm going to die at the same time.
I wonder though, because there's a lot of people who enjoy choking. Like, I don't mind it. But I wonder if that also plays part into it. Like you're crushing them to the point where it's like hard to breathe, kind of like the choking thing. By the way, Pete, this is an awesome way to kick off the podcast, and I want to acknowledge the intro, your articulation of starting out the podcast from 12, 13 episodes ago. Today has increased drastically. Like I can tell. Hopefully, you guys can tell who are listening to it as well. So
that's so funny. I mean, well, I think the saying is like, as long as they're not turning blue, it's not enough, kind of thing.
Even after we just mentioned that most of this stuff is not monetizable, we're talking about like auto asphyxiation, like within the first 5 minutes, and that's where we are. So share this with your friends so they can also know that you're a pervert as well.
That's exactly what, right? They're gonna be like, "What the fuck are you listening to, bro?" I couldn't even get past the first 6 minutes of the video because they're talking about suffocating their girlfriends or wives.
Well, I wanted to see, do you guys watch NASCAR? Do you guys follow NASCAR at all?
No.
I don't know if you know this, but there is a race car driver named Brandon, and he is super popular these days. And I just picked up one of his shirts. I don't know if you guys seen that, but let's go Brandon. And this guy, he's just one hell of a race car driver. Just thought I'd throw that out there. What are your guys' thoughts?
For everybody who's listening, Test Your Levels has an awesome tank top, probably the best tank top I've ever seen, in all honesty. And it says, "Let's go, Joe Biden." I'm sorry, "Let's go, Brandon" on the front of it. I just created a discount code for one of the things I'm working on, and that is the discount code. "Let's go, Brandon."
Nice. Oh yeah. And that's for Triggered Brand. You can find the link in the description. So I wanted to get a little serious with you guys. So I know, Dave, I know you saw my video I put out yesterday on my Test Your Levels YouTube channel. Basically, the FDA is working on slowly phasing out compounded hormones. So those are hormones that you get from a compound pharmacy, and compounded medicines are extremely important because, in certain cases, like let's say I just wanted 200 milligrams of test and 100 milligrams of DECA. They could put that together, maybe not that exact formula, but they could put that together to where basically it's a custom protocol, medicine for me. But that's not really as much what compounded pharmacies do as much these days. They're basically, if you're going to a TRT clinic, you're getting your medicine from a compound pharmacy. They make lots of different stuff. And basically what the FDA did is they put together a panel of people that are on their payroll. And they're all funded by Big Pharma in the first place. So they put together a committee that some fucking compound pharma protocol people, and they basically were asked the question, like, do compounded hormones offer any clinical benefit to the patient? And if you're listening to this and you don't walk around with your eyes closed and your head up your ass, they came back and said, nope, they offer no clinical value. And so you're saying, okay, well, shit, I don't care. I get my test from pharmacy, whatever. Why is this even important? Why are you guys talking about this shit? Basically, what they're doing is they're making it so that compounding pharmacies cannot sell hormones to patients. Basically, you will have to get everything from Big Pharma. Now, whether you can use GoodRx, whether your doctor will even write some of this stuff, they're basically taking away your freedoms of medicine. That's the long story short. So go try to get HCG/Pregnal. You're going to find that it's a lot more expensive. There's a shortage of it right now. But basically, they're just chipping away at your freedoms. They're making you take certain shots, and they're taking away other shots. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Oh, my goodness. This is the first time. I saw your story the other day, but I didn't realize the depth of that. Already,
you're saying you clicked on my story and did not watch my video.
I saw your story and I was like, oh, that sounds super interesting. I want to watch that, but I didn't ever go back to end up watching it. And to understand that is incredible. But the first thing that comes to my mind, in all honesty, is something called regulatory capture in the finance world, which is my background. There's regulatory capture in certain industries where, like the finance industry or different, the insurance industry or different segments of the finance industry, where you have industry players, then they basically bribe, according to like legal donations, right? I'm doing quotes here for everybody listening. People who are setting the rules, whether that be some type of quasi-government agency like the FDA or directly to people in government. And then what ends up happening is those people switch back and forth all the time, so that it becomes, instead of black and white, like you have the agency that's supposed to be setting regulations and policies and et cetera, and then you have industry, right? You're black and white. And over time, that just becomes gray, and there's no separation between those two. And I personally have seen, like, it appears that is completely that way with the FDA and how big pharma works, and it's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I can't remember all the names of the different companies, but I know the guy Awaken with JP did something where he was showing that all of these people that either went from the FDA to high-end jobs at Pfizer, Moderna, all those places, and then flip-flop people that came from that industry and got like cush jobs at the FDA. So, I mean,
What, Dave, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so here's what comes to mind is I can't remember the last time, and it may have never even happened in my lifetime or anyone else's lifetime, where science no longer matters. Like literally, like what's happening right now in this world is science no longer matters. A mask has been proven time and time again. That's why, because they're not developed for preventing disease spread. It's preventing things, usually like the N95 masks are preventing things from getting into your lungs. But the blue ones, for instance, the medical ones, are actually meant to stop perspiration for 15 minutes before they get saturated and they actually more comes out. That's why doctors take it on, throw it out, put another one on, because it actually works as basically like a spray after the bacteria builds in the system, just like a filter. It's like a filter at your house that you have to change out, because then it gets worse and then it's just funneling all the dust through particles through the air. So like even like that, something as simple as that, a mask. The CDC didn't make it mandatory originally because they knew it wasn't going to do anything. They still know it doesn't. They made the 6-foot rule up, and then they're like, oh, you don't have to be within 3 feet of each other, right? But the 6-foot rule is just what people think by nowadays. So it's like coming to such a point where they know that we're programmed to listen to everything that they say. It's almost like back in the day, you used to be watching a TV box, and that was the filtration unit that you had. Everything that you saw on TV you thought was real. War of the Worlds, for instance. People were freaking out that didn't live in major cities because people thought that there were like aliens on Earth that were blowing up the world. War of the Worlds. That was the original thing. And then they did a remake with Tom Cruise, which is actually really good. But needless to say, it's like science no longer matters. Like, how can someone say that someone needs hormones and, oh, it has no medical use, period? Like, what? But a doctor can prescribe it, and doctors, like literal doctors, not HRT clinics, literal doctors that I work with will send someone to a compounding pharmacy, Empower, for instance, is the big one that I'm thinking of, to get their drugs from there to save money, because the doctors don't make money off the drugs that are being sold. The big pharma does, and they'd rather just the clients save more money because it's a better price, and that's what a good doctor would do. And you're trying to tell people that need drugs, like that a male is going to be a woman without, or a woman does not feel like a woman without progesterone, and they need progesterone instead of birth control, what the FDA is going to push, that it's not needed. So I don't understand how they're actually getting away with illegal things. The birth control was banned originally by the FDA and rejected, and then they banned every single person that was on that original cabinet that was like, look, here's a research, like, don't do it. And then they banned it, and then they brought new people in, banned all the research that they did, and they weren't allowed to publish anymore, these doctors and these researchers, ever again, and silenced them, and then approved birth control. So it's kind of to the point now where people are going to be fed up. We see what's going on in Australia right now, where people are walking around without masks and they're just getting dragged to jail and stuff like that because they're being medications that are being forced down their throats. And now we're having medications that are needed, that are taken away from us, that have proven time and time again to improve health. So that's my stance on it.
We all have these hormones in our body. Like, how is that not fucking beneficial? You come out of the fucking womb and you have these hormones, or you develop these hormones as you progress through like the aging process, right? From like a newborn to whatever age certain hormones like start to be created. And like, how is that not fucking beneficial? On a side note, I wanted to actually ask a question here because you brought up birth control, and this is more of a selfish question. So I was actually talking to my girlfriend, and she had mentioned, so she doesn't take birth control at all, and she hasn't in years. But she mentioned that before taking birth control, She had a high sex drive. After taking birth control, it's never been the same. And Dave, I know you work with a lot of women. What are your thoughts on that, or things that she might be like? It would be a good idea to get checked, and or things that she could start testing if she wanted to change that or affect that.
Yeah, so it's a relatively complex subject, and to be honest, most of my medical cases are going to be women, medical and functional health. And with women, I do like to stick to the functional side of it. But birth control is essentially, it is a steroid. It's hormones. It is artificial hormones. So it essentially tries to it's a combination of if it's hormonal based, it's either progesterone and estrogen, which was their common ones back in the day. And now the newer ones, like one of the IUDs that in particular, that's really common, is a progesterone base, and more of the newer ones are usually progesterone. And then you have the other ones that, like the copper IUD, which is non-hormonal. That's the only non-hormonal birth control out there. But the reasoning for sex drive being affected so much is the fake hormones. It fake cycles. So until you get your cycle rebooted, and literally I literally will say it openly every single time, it's a post-cycle therapy that you have to go on, just as if a woman was running Anavar or anything else, to get their hormones back online, because it is a balance of estrogen and progesterone. So what happens in a female cycle is estrogen, like basically they start their bleed, their estrogen is going to start to go up, right? And their estrogen stays a little bit elevated, and their progesterone is on the lower end of the scale. And then when they start to ovulate, the progesterone spikes up, and as well as luteinizing hormone and FSH. That's how they get pregnant very easily. The luteinizing hormone, FSH, goes up during the ovulation, and the estrogen starts to come down. So they kind of like invert. Now the estrogen won't go below, like on numbers, it won't go below the progesterone. And then they're in the luteal phase after they ovulate. So it goes from follicular phase in the beginning to the ovulation phase, which is ovulation, not really a phase, and then to the luteal phase, where in the luteal phase, the progesterone goes up, and then it starts to come back down a little bit before the cycle. So if there isn't a balance between that estrogen and progesterone, which are ratios, which estrogen dominance, for instance, for women will make them store body fat a lot easily around their like hips, waistline, glutes, stuff like that. That's why
getting her progesterone, FSH, LH, and estrogen checked would probably be from. By the way, this is super interesting because I don't know about you, Pete, but like I've never once even slightly paid attention to women's hormones, but it is interesting, and I appreciate you sharing that. But going through and getting those checked, because it's been years since she's been off, like probably 10 years since she's been off of any type of birth control. But obviously, like I wonder if it's where if you take a cycle of tren or something, it could permanently fuck your shit up. You know what I mean? So I wonder if that's the same.
So what I would run is I would run lab work in the 19th or 20th day of the cycle. This way, it's right out the ovulation phase, and it's in the luteal phase. You're going to see the progesterone spike, so you can see if the progesterone is getting high enough. If the progesterone isn't getting high enough, then there are things out there like Vitixberry or Chasteberry. It is very, very common one. And you can take that to try to increase it. It also actually binds to the opioid receptor, so it can actually help with painful periods, which a lot of people don't know. So it's a super interesting thing. So progesterone is usually the one that I look at when it comes to sex drive and emotions or painful periods. The most common, that's usually where most women are lacking, is either progesterone being too low or too high. So that's where I would test, is in that 19th or 20th day after the bleed, and go from there.
I want to segue, because we're talking about female hormones, but compounded hormone band that I'm talking about, it's not just Test, DECA, HCG, it's female ones as well. So estrogen, progesterone, estriol, all of them. So it's not just men, it's women as well. And I don't know, do you guys know who Nelson Vergel is?
That sounds really familiar. I don't know how.
He's like the godfather of TRT and men's health.
He wrote a book, didn't he, or something?
He's wrote multiple books. He runs and owns the Excel Male Forum, which is a real big TRT forum. Anyway, he started a whole alliance called the Compound Hormone Alliance, and I'll put the link in their description. And basically what he did, it's also in the link. If you want to watch my video, the link is in the description, but it's Compound Hormone Alliance. And basically what he did is he put up 2 articles on the HCG ban and then also this new FDA compounded hormone ban. And basically, if you click on Take Action, it'll bring you, and you click on one, and you basically have to put in your information, like your address, name, email, and it will freaking auto send an email to the FDA, to the governors that are in charge of this. And then after you're done, it will bring you to the next, either the HCG or the compounded one. And so you can basically it'll auto send pre-filled emails to your representatives and people in the FDA saying, this is bullshit. I like my compounded hormones. It's beneficial for me. So I just wanted to get that out there.
That's fantastic.
He put the site up like 3 days ago, something like that. The guy's amazing. Nelson Vergel, freaking awesome. If you're listening, you're probably not, but you're awesome. He's actually in the thumbnail of my video. I put a little arrow and said rock star. He's freaking Nelson Vergel. I'll just real quick, his background. So he got HIV a long time ago, and there was like no health care for men. And he started championing for men's health, for all this stuff. And he kind of slowly transitioned into TRT. He's like 50 something years old. I don't know. Maybe he's 40. I don't know his age, but he's freaking pretty damn jacked for an older guy. But anyway, just wanted to get that out there. I have a really fun question for you guys. Okay.
I want to hear this question. If it's anything as good as the first question, this will be good.
May not be as sexual, but it's more relevant to what you guys like talking about. So, all right, 20 weeks, ultimate cycle you would want to take. There would be no health risk. It would not be detrimental to your health at all. No side effects, no permanent damage. What is the Mac Daddy cycle you guys would want to take?
Oh, man.
I know. I'll give you guys some time to think. I had a little bit of time to think about it. And it's not super scientific because I'm not super into all these different steroids. But I would probably say like a gram of test, 500 milligrams of Deca. I don't really know the dosage for D-ball, but I would probably take D-ball and then probably like 50 milligrams of Anavar a day. That would be like my Mac Daddy, like fat stack.
Man, that's been good.
You said 20 weeks or 12?
I mean, you could do it up to 20 weeks. I'm just saying, like, this is a fictional hypothetical. We're not telling anyone to do this at home, but I'm just saying, like, no health benefits, no risk. You could just run this cycle.
No side effects either.
Nope. You could take 3 grams of test, no side effects. You're just feeling fantastic.
Oh, man. All right. Do you want me to go first?
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, man. I'm going to. This means you have to delete it off the internet after I say this because someone's going to do this and kill themselves.
No, do not do this. This is hypothetical.
Okay. So let's say you could also eat as much food too, right? So
you're in like God mode in a video game. Like, nothing can hurt you.
All right. So I'm going to start off at 3 grams of testosterone and 1 gram of Deca. And then on top of that, I'm also going to be taking 18 IUs of growth hormone a day, pharmaceutical grade, because bank account doesn't matter in this scenario. And then I'm also going to be taking Lantus at, we're going to start at 60 IUs a day. And then pre-workout, we're going to be taking 20 IUs of Humalog. And post-workout, we're going to be doing 20 IUs of Humalog. Then, you said it, I have an answer. After 6 weeks, we'll take the 3 grams of testosterone up to 5 grams of testosterone. We'll be taking the Deca up to 2 grams of Deca. And then we're also going to be layering in now 100 milligrams of Anadrol a day for 2 weeks. The Lantus will be taken up to 100 IUs. The Humalog will stay the same. And then at 8 weeks, we are going to drop the Anadrol again. You'll take the Deca up to 3 grams until week 10. At week 10, you're going to be switching in 750 milligrams of Tren and dropping the Deca. The Lantus, because your food should be titrating up as well at this point, you'll be taking the Lantus up to 140 IUs as long as the blood sugars are staying in check. At 14 weeks, Tren up to 1.5 grams and test at 6 grams at this point because you have to be increasing the androgen upregulates over time. At this point, you probably have to introduce something like either a Winstrol, which would be awesome if there were no side effects on the joints, or a Provirone to help with the SHGB levels. So I'd be doing either 100 milligrams of Provirone or 100 milligrams of Winstrol to controlling SHGB levels at this point, and pretty much run that through. So you asked it, I answered it. That would be the God tier cycle, and it would also put you in the grave really quickly.
You forgot creatine.
Oh, well, no, you have to do injectable creatine though on the second.
And just as a note, while Dave wow, that was very detailed for a very short thought. Sam's actually writing this down, so I want to hear Sam now.
Well,
I got pen and paper.
I'm starting, and then I hear Dave 3 grams of test, and then you take that up to 6 grams through 20 weeks, and I'm like, I don't even think I should fucking answer this. Like, I'm at like, okay, I've never done 750 milligrams of test a week, so I'm like, okay, 750 milligrams of test. I would probably do 200 to 400 milligrams or titrate up of Deca. I'd have Provirone in there. I would do either start right off the bat at trend 50 milligrams a week and work my way up in there. Definitely have HGH in there. Insulin I would have in there. But if this is a cycle for everything, I mean, there would be like specific type of things that I would be using for pre-workout as well. And, maybe I'd use like very, very just testosterone suspension pre-workout and like all these other pieces, like, Anadrol on these days and something else on these other days, back and forth. I would also add in like LGD 3303, the injectable version, at something like 20 to 50 milligrams per day. I don't know if I could honestly eat enough food to make sense of this. Like at the dosages that I'm talking about, the dosages Dave was talking about, there's no way I could eat that much. Like I'm having
now.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to talk about. So you mentioned the health related things, and a couple of weeks ago I had mentioned blood pressure. How it was something that I was working at because I checked mine. I was in 140. Right, and I was like, oh fuck, right? Because we've had a bunch of people die over this past like 18 months, and we don't know it's from blood pressure, but it's known as a silent killer. And I want to let you guys know that my blood pressure this morning 106 over 59. Yesterday 116 over 56 and 56. So the top number is like if you're doing the cylinder on a car, right? And it's compressing. That's like the top number as it's going into the cylinder, right? That's the pressure pushing out on our arteries. And when it's sucking back in the cylinder and it's pulling back after it's just compressed, that's the second number, the diastolic number, where it's basically resting, our heart's sitting there. And I've been tracking daily or multiple times per day my blood pressure. And I put like, I think 6 different things all stacked together, because when you look at blood pressure, people are like, oh man, it's something that I see people struggling with. But I didn't use any drugs. Well, Cialis, but not counting that because I couldn't have done this without this, and I wasn't consistent with it. But like ginger, potassium, meditation, Cialis, green tea, and reduced salt intake. That combination within 3 weeks of the last time we did this, I went from around 140, high 130s for the systolic to over 80-ish, roughly, over between like mid 70s to 80, and completely obliterated that within a matter of weeks without using any drugs at all. All these are backed up by science. Super interesting. The mindfulness meditation, also backed up by science that it lowers blood pressure. Makes sense, though.
Do you think that would prevent any heart issues that I would have with the cycle that I just spoke about?
That's what made me think of this.
No, I want to reiterate, like, you guys, that was all 100% hypothetical. I do not recommend that.
So what's also interesting is that Sam is pretty much at the heaviest you've ever been, and you've got probably close to your best blood pressure right now. And that's interesting. And there's a second part to my hypothetical question. So at the end of the cycle, you can keep all the gains that you had. Like you'll literally walk around for the rest of your life looking like you did at peak at the end of the cycle, but you lose 1 inch on your penis. Are you keeping the gains or are you losing an inch?
Definitely not.
Well, I don't even have an inch to give. So honestly, if like, here's the thing at the end of the day that people forget. I wouldn't want to be that big. Like with that cycle, I would not want to be that big and to stay that big. Even if I did have the option without the reduction in penis size, because that's not only the silent killer blood pressure, but the other silent killer is weight. So I wouldn't want to be that big at all.
But what do you got? How much do you guys weigh?
I weigh probably 213 right now, 6 foot 213.
Oh wow, okay. And
Dave, what do you last time I woke up fasted, I was 209. I'm really light right now though. Usually I'm 225 to 230 and I'm 5'8". So I'm relatively big.
I'm like the last week I was just about 238 or something like that, and I'll probably be about 240 going into this next week. But like Dave, you'd mentioned like the silent killer, like weight, and I'm sitting here, the AC's on, and I'm literally sitting here sweating. And I'm not taking anything crazy in terms of compounds. Like I'm not doing anything other than like caffeine. And I took some kratom today, but other than that, I'm sitting here just sweating because I'm 240 pounds. My body
was part of the blood pressure protocol DMP by any chance?
Well, I said no drugs. If I look at the other side of the paper, DMP.
It's fertilizer, man. It's not a drug.
Exactly. So it's perfectly legal to buy as a fertilizer for anybody who needs to fertilize their plants at home, because you don't take it. I'm actually a big fan of DMP.
Yeah,
but no, we've already definitely cannot monetize this in any way, shape, or form. I had a question over on YouTube. Like if you could do one cycle per year, you could only do one cycle per year. Like, what would that cycle be for you guys? I've never thought about it, but like if you could just do one cycle per year, you couldn't do just TRT. It had to be like one cycle. What would you be? Or like the length wise?
Simple. It would be what I've hypothetically done before. 500 milligrams of test, 100 milligrams of Deca. Very simple.
Yeah. I'm pretty simple too. I probably titrate up to 600 because I don't aromatize heavily at all. So I want to preface that. I would probably titrate up to 600 milligrams of test and either using 500 milligrams of like a Primo or 300 milligrams of Masterone. Just very simple. Like I'm very basic with stuff, even though I had a very elaborate explanation on it before.
Pete,
when I hear like 500 milligrams of Proviron, like that seems like a lot. I'm not super familiar with Proviron. I know that it helps kind of the estrogen management, kind of it helps with other drugs, but I mean, is it typical to take like 500 milligrams, or is that a pretty high dose of Proviron?
So I mean, like it depends. It's kind of the test to DECA ratio that a lot of people talk about, which isn't entirely true for everyone, but the test to Primo ratio, I mean, it's almost like a 1-to-1 ratio, and like you can run it to the moon kind of thing, because they balance each other very well together. So it's essentially how much do you aromatize, and using that Primo to balance out the aromatization, the estrogenic issues that you have. So testosterone is the best muscle builder out there, in my opinion, and with the least side effects. And then you basically use the other androgens to help to balance out the testosterone. So it's all that kind of like weight and balance system. So you can do 300 milligrams of testosterone and 200 milligrams of Primo and get great results. You can run 300 milligrams of Primo and get great results with the 300 milligrams of test. It's not like there's a magic number that you need 500 milligrams, but it is more mild as far as estrogen control versus Masterone. Masterone tends to be better, more androgenic, so it's better with the estrogen control than the Primobolan. So I just like Primobolan from the more anabolic properties from it versus
You're saying Proviron. You're saying Proviron?
No, Primobolan. Sorry, Primobolan.
Okay. I thought we were talking about Proviron. My bad.
No. Primobolan. Sorry.
Okay.
Did I say Proviron?
I don't know. What's the
difference? Switch over to Primo.
Primo. Sorry, not Proviron.
What's the difference? What's the difference between Primo and Proviron?
Primo Proviron? Well, Primo doesn't control your SHGB levels like a sex-binding hormone like Proviron does. Proviron is bioidentical to DHT. In fact, they had an injectable form of DHT, and they realized that DHT like literally did nothing for you. So they actually pulled it from the market, and Proviron was the I can't remember. I believe that Proviron is methylated, but it just doesn't bypass the liver and doesn't hit the liver at all. If I'm not mistaken, it's non-liver toxic. It's one of the few out there. I think there's 2 that are, and that happens to be one of them. And oral Primo is as well, if I'm not mistaken. Those are the only 2. But Proviron is good for controlling SHGB levels, and that's pretty much what the drug does. Like it's DHT. It's just straight DHT. So it's not like you're not getting anabolic properties really out of it by any means. It's more of the androgenic that you're getting out of it.
It raises SHBG?
It lowers.
Yeah, it would lower.
Lowers.
And you have more free time.
Doesn't testosterone really lower your SHBG?
Well, okay, so Winstrol lowers it. So Winstrol lowers it, the SHGB levels by like up to 50% in studies that I've read. And then Proviron, it just binds very heavily and is because of extremely androgenic, and that's where you get the estrogenic control from it a little bit as well. But it basically helps you free up that testosterone. So it's a different mechanic that it uses than the Winstrol does. But they're both DHT derived drugs, but one works in a different mechanic than the other.
So a question on your guys' cycle. So hypothetically, right, if you guys have 600 and then a little bit of DECA or a little bit of some Primo or something, and then you had mentioned DECA and test. When you guys do that, or hypothetically do that, what's your titration method? Like, so whether it's 6 weeks or 16 weeks, are you just like, I'm starting at 500, or are you at like 200? And then what's your sequence for like changing that?
For me personally, it's 200 to 500 and then back down to 200. I know that's probably not scientific, but.
So if you were like, hey, I'm gonna do a 8-week or 12-week cycle, you're on TRT at 200 roughly, right? So you go from 200 to 500 for that 8 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it is, and then you just come back down, correct?
Yep.
Dave, do you do something similar like that? Be like, okay, I'm gonna do a cycle and I'm gonna start at 600 tests, or do you start like at your TRT dose and then you go, halfway up in between, or do you just go straight to the?
Yeah, so that's a super good question. And again, like if it was for someone else, it'd definitely be very bio-individual. So this is based off of myself and nothing else. Now I can jump with tests pretty fast. I can jump from 300 to 600 if I wanted to, and I would have no sides. Whereas someone else, they're going to have estrogen issues and they have to layer things in to make sure they don't have estrogen issues. So, I mean, to be honest, like for me, it'd probably be like 400 or 450. You layer in a little bit of something to control the estrogen that's not an aromatizer inhibitor. And then I'd probably go up from there. I mean, at the end of the day, I like that 1 gram or less marker when it comes to overall androgens in the body or exogenous hormones in the body, as crazy as that cycle was that I named off earlier, but I'm pretty mild when it comes to stuff. Well, mild in the bodybuilding world, in the super physiological world, that's very, very mild for competitors. So I want to stair step up to get as much as I can, and it's androgen built over time. So I want to slow down the androgen buildup over time and get as much progress that I can to get the benefits out of the extra muscle protein synthesis and some other things out of that period of time. So, I mean, there's no issue going to just straight to it, but I want to push out so I get less side effects over that period of time and more out of that over a longer period of time. So you can stretch it out. You can run it for 20 weeks or something like that if you take it very, very slow and steady versus running it for 12 weeks or so, 8 to 12 weeks, and then needing to come off.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing. I wasn't, because everybody's got a little bit different philosophy on how they like how they respond to things. So thanks for sharing that or whatever.
I wanted to share something just random, but I know, Sam, you eat a lot of meat. I'm sure, David, I don't know. I'm assuming you eat a lot of high protein as well. I have a real hard time freaking cooking like 5 chicken breasts and just slicing them up. And then I walk past my fridge and I'm like, I don't feel like heating that up, putting sauce on it. And I just don't. And I end up throwing it away a lot of the time. So what I did, real simple idea. I cooked 6 chicken breasts. I trim the fat. I cut off, that little at the top part, you have to kind of like cut out a 90 degree. It's got some weird, I don't even know what the hell that is.
It's a tendon.
It's what?
Tendon.
some kind of tendon. So I just baked all the chicken. I cut them all up and I started putting them in a blender. And I basically made shredded chicken out of pure chicken breast. And then I mixed in, I'm going to start using sugar-free barbecue sauce, but I was just finishing up my Sweet Baby Ray's. So I just put a bunch of Sweet Baby Ray's in there and swirled that shit up. And I put the rest in the freezer. And now I'm just pulling it out. I put it on a low-carb tortilla, some fat-free cheese, and maybe a little extra but it makes it easier to eat for me because it's not like I'm chewing on chicken and I'm having to break it down. The blender already did that. It's kind of like a pulled chicken type thing, but without all the fat from the dark meat. So I thought I'd share that. If someone wants to give that a try, just a pro tip, put in like 2 or 3 pieces of chicken, let it blend up, and then you got to scoop it out. If you put it all in there and there's no liquid, you're gonna blend up the bottom like inch, and then the rest of the chicken will just sit there.
I'll share what I do because I eat 3 pounds of meat per day. But also that's when I've blended chicken before and like made it into protein shakes, and that's what I'm picturing when you say you put it into the blender. But what it sounds like is more like a pulled pork type of thing.
Yeah, there's no liquid at all. So I just chop up the chicken the breast in like 1 inch by 1 inch cubes, and I'll throw 3 in there, pulse the blender. If I need to, get in with a fork, push the piece down, blend it up, and then I just turn it upside down and I put it in a bowl and just keep doing that. So it's just like shredded pork or shredded chicken.
Interesting. So some of the things that I've done lately for probably the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months is I've been using a meal prep 1 day for the next 2 days, or if my girlfriend's here, she generally makes dinner, so it lasts me 3 days. But what I'll do is 3 pounds of thighs and 3 pounds of breasts. Makes it taste better because the extra fat with the thighs. But with my diet, we talked about this a while back, is I do like 5 different types of vegetables, 5 different types of spices and herbs, so that it doesn't taste like fucking shit. But also I do it for the micronutrients, because if not only do I use 5 vegetables and 5 spices and herbs with all the meals, I rotate those or change those out regularly so that I'm getting a different variety of micronutrients into my diet consistently, because that's like so many people are deficient in some fashion of micronutrients. But for me, the side effect is that it doesn't taste like so chewy and bland and just chicken. Like, don't get too old of it by changing things up for me. Dave, do you have any tips on that? Or things? What do you like? Do you count like how many pounds or anything like that meat you eat per day?
I'm a bodybuilder. Yeah, I can eye spot better than people at like Whole Foods and stuff like that are doing the meat and stuff like that. I'll be like, yeah, you're short by X amount, and they're like, like, I do this for a living. How did you know that? I was like, yeah, I've done this long enough. So I usually eye spot stuff in the off season. I'll eye spot. On season, I'll make sure like I weigh it every once in a while just to make sure that I'm 100% accurate with my protein, because protein's not going to convert to fat at the end of the day. But yeah, so for me in particular, I go through so much chicken that we do like 6 pounds in the crock pot at a time. You literally crock pot it for 4 hours on slow, and it's essentially what Pete's doing, but it's a lot lazier way of doing it. And you literally just take it, and you take 2 forks, and you just shred it up. And it's a super way to get 6 pounds, because I actually don't like. We have tried blending it to make it feel like pulled chicken, and it made it almost like dog foody kind of tasting.
That's what I'm picturing when Pete was talking about that. I was like, mine tasted like dog food, looked like dog food when I put it in the blender. But you must have an awesome blender, because mine was like very dog food.
No, the awesome blenders will turn it into nothing. It would be like mush, because we have a Vitamix, which is like a $600 blender, and that thing will be like puree. And chicken puree does not sound good. So I do have texture issues. So the few things that I do is, one, the pulled chicken works, and then every once in a while you can just air fry some chicken breasts and then throw them in there, and I'll cut them up, right? Like, so because I'm lazy and I don't want to sit there and cut it with a knife, right? Cutting with a knife is one thing that slows down the process and it makes it a hassle. So I will like take a scissors, and when I go to like make a meal, and I'll be like cut and cut the chicken up, like, so I don't actually have to cut it, sit there, put it on a plate, and then I can just throw it in a bowl. So I eat everything out of a big bowl. Here you go, big bowl. And I do chicken and rice for 90 to 95% of my meals, just because it's easy and it's cheap. And on top of it, what I'll do is the seasonings and salt in broth. For me, it's broth. So lemons, broth, seasonings. And what I'll do is I will put the chicken in. I'll heat the rice. I heat up in rice packets. Trader Joe's, by the way, organic rice packets, and they cost like 50 cents for like 2 cups worth of it. It's super cheap.
Yeah.
And I'll heat it for 3 minutes. So I have 2 cups of rice from that. And then I will heat the chicken. But when I put the chicken into the bowl, I put the chicken in the bowl. I put some broth in the bowl to keep it moist. And then I put some salt in it. I put some dill in it, and I put lemon juice. And it's basically like a cheap version of avocado. I'm Greek. So my Greek grandmother used to make it. And it's like my childhood all over again. And that's how I eat most of my meals. But then there are like some meals that I've had over time that have been really good, like coconut oil with coconut aminos and a little bit of salt, and it's like super sweet. Tastes really good to me. So you'll find those little mixtures that you can just like religiously eat, and then you'll figure out what macronutrients you need at that point in the day. And that's kind of what I do. But almost all my meals are basically like chicken soup, and because it's faster to put down. And
do you guys?
That's interesting.
Do you guys?
Well, I was going to say, I think we're at a good stopping point for this episode. We're actually filming another episode so that we can get all this out, so we can enjoy the Christmas and the New Year's holiday. So just want to thank you guys for listening to us. If you do enjoy this, you find this entertaining, share this with a buddy, email them, send them a link, post it on somewhere. But we definitely appreciate it. Want to thank Dave for being here and Sam. So thanks for being here, and we'll catch you on the next one.